Hey, what's going on, guys? So, I was going to make a video just because, dude, what's going on in the world is crazy because I'm going to be honest. Back in 2015, when I heard Donald Trump was talking about running for president, now, I had never voted ever until this last election, or the midterms before that, actually. Anyhow, but back in 2015, when I heard Donald Trump was going to run for president, the reason I hadn't voted up until that point was because it always seems like the government does whatever the hell they want to do. They seem like they were all playing on the same team. They would just tell you what you wanted to hear. Whoever sold it best is who ended up getting in power. But then it's like they never did anything. Like they would say, we're going to do this. And either they created a problem or like they would make, like just say they would make a new spot in government with 1,000 people in it to take care of one problem, and they were just multiplying. They never actually took care of the issue. And so in my mind, I was like, so you're telling me a reality TV, millionaire, which Donald Trump has been famous, never been called racist, been in many rap songs, done Jesse Jackson's presidency campaign, the first black president. He was the first one to run to be a president. He didn't win, but still, Trump funded it. And of course, you got all Barack and all them doing their crap now. But what I'm going to say is, when Trump was in office the first time, everything was great, actually, except for the bullcrap the media was pushing. But I am so glad that Biden got the election the second time. Just imagine if he didn't. One, we wouldn't have already wiped out Iran. We wouldn't have got Maduro that time. I mean, he may have, but I highly doubt it. Because everything had to fall in order. And just think, if God didn't move that bullet to where it only hit his ear, literally 1 inch over, that could have been the end of him. God is using Trump to get things done. He's taking care of Christians. He's bombed the terrorists and everything in Nigeria that were killing Christians en masse. He took care of it. Guess what? They quit. And Iran, I'm telling you, they like about to be going on their fourth Ayatollah already, because the second son, supposedly lost his leg, and they brought out a picture that had flowers on it, just like his dad. So, they didn't have a video of him alive or anything. But supposedly he lost a leg and he's alive. And he sent a text message. He didn't show up to his little inauguration. But Trump is saving the world. This is the most popular president I have ever. Like, yeah, Abraham Lincoln, good president. Reagan, good president. Every single country in this world knows who the fuck Donald Trump is. They know it. And right now, if you ask me, China and Russia are shaking in their fucking boots, because they know their citizens will eventually see some of these videos like, Cuba's about to be free after 67 years of oppression. Iran, they're really close to being free after 47 years. Venezuela, they're like, everything has changed. And if he didn't do it in the order he did, guys, like, first thing he did when he got in, what did he do? He took the Panama Canal back, because China had the first port on each side, first and last. So, just say he didn't do that. Whenever he went to Venezuela or Iran, China would have shut down the fucking canal. And that's it. They would have tried to, do an embargo on us and block all our shipping. Can't do that, because he took care of that first. Then Maduro, which is starving out Cuba. And at the, dude, literally 2 months into 2026, Maduro's gone and Iran's gone. Both leaders gone. So, anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. If you know of a better president or a more famous leader at any time, who is it? And just put it in the comments. I'm curious, because I know the internet and the information age is different now, so that's a big difference. But who else was more famous than Donald J. Trump? And tell me, I mean, I get tired of hearing some of his speeches. I get tired of, oh, that war wouldn't have started if I was in power. Yeah, and if he would have got into president last time, we would be fucked right now. Right now, we'd be fucked. That'd be it. We'd be with this EU globalist elites because they're trying to get rid of the middle class by flooding every first world country with a bunch of third world immigrants, so the cost of housing goes up. They take jobs and do them for pay that most people in that area wouldn't take that low of a pay. So therefore, it's making it to where you got elites, no middle class, and then just poor, and you're fucking stuck with it. That's what they wanted. Look at Britain. They used to be the world's strongest navy, and they can't get one fucking ship to go defend their territory. They got 6 destroyers. 4 of them are in dry dock. One of them's supposedly with NATO, and the other one needs repairs. And at first they said it needed to, be restocked with weapons and stuff. It's like, what war have you been in to take weapons off the motherfucker? I don't get it. It blows my mind. But they really, all of Europe, fuck Europe, and Canada needs to get its shit together like quick. Because they're talking about, we're closer to Europe than we are America. Man, no the fuck you ain't. And keep fucking around and we won't protect your ass. But after Britain shows its hand that it can't defend its own territory, fucking Ukraine is going to be the powerhouse of fucking Europe. They're destroying Russia. Now all the drones from Iran are gone. Fucking China ain't getting the oil. China ain't getting the oil from Venezuela. It's amazing. I am so sorry for the beginning of this video. I just wanted to get that out there because I been wanting to say something. But please, let me know who you think the best president, leader, ruler ever was. Let's get it, guys. This is, U.S. just did something out of this world. Iran's entire air force evaporated.
Iran spent 47 years building its air force.
And
didn't build a very good force, but it built something that it thought would at least allow it to maintain small pockets of air force that hundreds of Iran's drones are sitting sullen and alone on an airfield. Iran spent 47 years building its air force. Didn't build a very good force, but it built something that it thought would at least allow it to maintain small pockets of air superiority over its own territory. But that didn't happen. In just 24 hours, the US wiped out Iran's entire air force. It's gone, evaporated. The shock and awe campaign has made even the prospect of an Iranian pilot taken to the sky suicidal. And there isn't a thing that Iran can do about any of it. The footage reveals everything. Shared by Max Afterburner, a video released by US...
I'm sorry, but his picture, I don't see... Like, when I hear a voice, I can imagine someone. I just don't see that deep voice going with him.
Central Command shows just one of the multitude of strikes that the US conducted against Iran's aging fleet of aircraft. Sitting sullen and alone on an airfield, the Iranian jet is destroyed in a heartbeat. And this has been happening over and over across Iran. Every airbase the US strikes results in Iranian airframes going up in flames. And it's gotten to the point where Iran basically has no options in the skies.
They don't.
Can't send aircraft to fight against America's overwhelming force. The few that it had that might be able to put up a fight are gone, and what is left are the dregs of an air force that is decades behind the curve. We'll explain why in just a few minutes. But before we do, Afterburner explains what is happening to Iran's air force right now. They've completely dismantled Iran's air force, hitting bases like Tabriz, Afterburner explains. Looks like destroying even more F-4 Phantoms, Su-22 attack aircraft, ground attack aircraft mainly are being vaporized, F-14 Tomcats, F-5 Tigers, and drone sites before anything can turn a wheel.
Don't you just hate that the F-14s are getting destroyed? I know they got it back when the Shah was around before 79, but I used to love F-14s from the Top Gun movie because, I was born in 80, so I was around for all those movies, and I just love the F-14 Tomcat, and just seeing that there's, not any that are, really usable. I hate that they're being destroyed. I wish we could have just scooped them up and took them.
Literally nothing is getting airborne at this point. Aerotime adds that Israel's Air Force has confirmed that it destroyed an Iranian F-4 along with an F-5 at the Tabriz base as each of the aircraft prepared for takeoff. So
there was a video of this Iranian, I don't know if he was he was IRGC, or he was on that side of it, but they were cheering thinking it was an American plane that got shot down, but it was a F-4 Phantom.
Even the Iranian pilots who were willing to attempt the suicide mission of taking on the US and Israel didn't get very far. Both the US and Israel have also been targeting the support facilities that enable airframes to take off. Satellite images reveal destroyed storage bunkers at the Konarak base and a shattered radar system at Zahedan. These weren't random strikes.
I looked this up. Okay, Iran is 3 times bigger than Texas. Ukraine is just about 10% smaller than Texas. Russia has lost over 1 million people and been trying to take Ukraine for 4 years. By the AI thing, it says it'll take 15 million people and 200 years before they would actually... Or, wait a minute, hold on, or was that 30 years? Either way, 15 million people at the rate they're going in order to take Ukraine. And within 4 days, we had air superiority off of 2 strike groups. If you include Israel, I'd say like 3 strike groups. We got 11 aircraft carriers. 3 are in dry dock. So imagine if we just sent like 6 aircraft strike groups out there. We could have obliterated all of that in seconds.
The US and Israel coordinated to cripple Iranian air power before it ever had a chance to make itself known. You'll have already noticed that the aircraft the US is taking out would be considered old by any modern military standards. But these airframes are the best that Iran has, and they're being systematic.
And the thing is, now weapons are so good, like the F-18, that right there is not too much younger than the F-4, but they got the Growler on it that can blind everything, so you don't need stealth anymore except for at the beginning.
Destroyed by an American and Israeli bombing campaign that has already achieved the most important goal for the joint Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion, achieve complete air superiority. That's according to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, who has confirmed that the US followed Israel's lead when it came to striking Iran just a few days ago, and that the scale of these strikes has devastated Iran's air force. The US strikes have resulted in the establishment of local air superiority. This air superiority will not only enhance the protection of our forces, but also allow them to continue the work over Iran, Kane declares. For that to have happened, the US not only had to have ruined Iran's airframes, but also destroyed the country's air defenses. That's a little hint. The US has already done both. We'll be getting to Iran's air defense situation a little later. On the aircraft front, the US bombardments of Iran's air bases have been so effective that not a single one of Iran's pilots has taken off. Iran hasn't attempted any manned sorties during the 4-day war so far, and frankly, any pilot who does try to take to the skies now will be engaging in a suicide mission, given both the age of their aircraft and the sheer level of air superiority that the US has obtained. Iranian fighter pilots also know that it's suicidal to go up against an F-15 Strike Eagle, F-16, F-18, or F-35, Afterburner explains. America's bombing campaign has been so successful over...
I do wish that F-22 would have got a damn kill. F-22 still ain't got a kill. And I hate it, because it's supposed to be better than the F-15. And the only way the F-15 got shot down was by friendly fire from Kuwait. I hate that. Because it was 104-0, but it wasn't. This doesn't count because they didn't know they were getting friendly fire. But yeah, we've sunk 51 warships within, right now, 10 days. 51 warships. And I know it was like 3-4 days ago we had already sunk like 35. I mean, this is insane. We are levels above China and Russia. China will not go across Taiwan's airspace. Ever since this war happened, China quit going over their air because they've been doing infractions for years. The minute we showed up and blew up all the Chinese air defense, China backed off of Taiwan, and they're purging their military leadership because they're all yes men. They're just telling Xi yes, and then Xi sees everything's getting blown up. So Trump, best president ever, hands down. I thought he was going to bring reality TV show into the White House, but he has just crushed it.
For a 24-hour period, that what was once a fleet of about 400 Iranian aircraft has been whittled down to about 200. In other words, what little aerial threat that Iran could have posed in the sky has been halved before a single one of its airframes could get off the ground. and it seems likely that the US has focused most of its fire on the aircraft that could have presented something resembling a threat, which leaves Iran with an air force that is little more than a collection of poorly maintained airframes that were built decades ago. This is what aerial domination looks like, and the US planned it all well in advance. That's according to Business Insider, which reveals that the US and Israel did far more than fling missiles and bombs at Iran from its fighter jets during the opening hours of the war. Both were much smarter than that. They knew that for as little threat as Iran's fighter jets posed, flying in without being prepared would still make their superior aircraft vulnerable. The outlet reports on more comments made by Kane, who said that the US campaign against Iran, which began on February 28th, was kicked off with the layering non-kinetic effects, disrupting and degrading and blinding Iran's ability to see, communicate and respond. What this translates to is that the US and Israel launched cyber attacks and even space commands that crippled Iran's air force hours before the first US fighter jets took off in the direction of Tehran. Kane says that the initial non-kinetic US approach targeted everything from Iran's command and control facilities through to its ballistic missile sites and intelligence infrastructure in an operation that was designed to daze and confuse them. It worked. Before Iran even knew what was happening, up to half of its airframes were destroyed, and the air defenses that were supposed to protect them, along with other key military nodes, had completely failed to take down even a single American or Israeli jet. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio argues that the US went proactively in a defensive way with its initial round of strikes, and that Iran has to get ready because the hardest hits are yet to come from the US military. That's the last thing that Iran's regime wants to hear. As it sifts through the wreckage of its destroyed fighter jets and other aircraft, the prospect of more coming when Iran is basically defenseless in the skies is terrifying. Iran will be wondering how all of this happened. How did its carefully laid plans for defeating the US fall apart so quickly? There are two answers to that question, one covering Iran's air defenses, and the other that dives into the detail about the state of that air force the country had built. We'll come to the second answer a little later in the video, but on the air defense front, there's no way to sugarcoat things for Iran. Its entire air defense network has utterly failed to do anything about the combined US and Israeli strikes. And that's why dozens, perhaps even hundreds of Iran's airframes are just craters in the ground right now. US President Donald Trump has already declared that Iran's air defenses are gone, along with its navy, air force, and most of its leadership structure. Trump also claims that Iran's missile capability is being diminished, which presumably also accounts for missiles that would have been fired by the country's air defense systems. We've had a very powerful impact. Virtually everything they had has been knocked out now. Their missile count is going down, Trump said on March 3rd. Dan Kane has emphasized this point when discussing the US and its air superiority, noting that Iran's air defenses have been degraded to the point where American pilots can fly with near impunity over Iranian territory. We're starting to see this in the nature of the US airframes that are flying into Iran right now. For instance, Asia Times reports that the US has started sending B-1 Lancer bombers into Iran to conduct airstrikes, rather than the B-2 Spirit stealth bombers that America sent earlier in the conflict.
Oh, and that's the other thing. Like, everyone keeps talking about how they thought it was going to be a forever war. One, no boots are going on the ground here. None. Not our boots, anyway. But, like, when he went to Venezuela and took Maduro, he could have made that a forever war. No, he was in and out, done. This right here, in and out, and we're about to be done. This is not a forever war. The reason we had forever wars before is we went to one place that had never had democracy, so they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't want it. But it was also due to our politicians fucking around and governing it. One, they tied the hands of our military behind their back, like you can't, the rules of engagement, or they had so many restrictions on them. And they were doing it just so the military, the companies that make all the money from making weapons and this and that, they made it drag out for 47 years with just this situation. But I'm talking about Trump is just going in, hitting, and getting it done. He's being gangsta as shit. And I love it. It's his last term, and I love it. It is hands down best ever.
This indicates a high level of confidence that Iran's long-range surface-to-air missile SAM systems are no longer a primary threat to non-stealth aircraft in certain corridors, the outlet reports, adding that the US and Israel are now focused on destroying as many of Iran's transporter Erector launchers to take out even more of its air defense capabilities. And naturally, weaker air defenses create more opportunities for American bombers and fighter jets to do their business, which will almost inevitably lead to the loss of yet more Iranian airframes, beyond those that the US destroyed in just 24 hours.
That right there is deadly as fuck.
How did Iran's air defenses fail so catastrophically in the first place? We'll get to that in a second, but before we do, you are watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to hit that button. Back to Iran's failed air defenses. We've already discussed how the US launched a non-kinetic campaign as a precursor to its early strikes, which likely took many of Iran's air defenses offline. However, Army technology reveals that there are more reasons why those defenses utterly failed to do the one thing they were designed to do.
Because they're Chinese and
Russian.
Russian.
Reports on the aggressive electromagnetic spectrum operations the US and Israel deployed, which would have shut down Iranian air defense radars so they couldn't see airframes and projectiles coming. However, this approach was combined with a more kinetic approach that saw the US and Israel divide their responsibilities. Specifically, the US took charge of strikes against Iran's air defenses, control centers, and much of the country's military and logistics infrastructure. Israel went after ballistic missile launchers and Iran's leadership. This was made a lot easier on the air defense front because the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, had retained about 100 air defense systems, but likely didn't have many of the missiles needed to use those systems to their fullest. Another of Iran's air defense problems comes from the fact that it's deployed copycat systems throughout much of its network. Yes, Iran has some Russian and Chinese air defense systems, but most of what it has are reverse-engineered versions of those systems, Army technology.
So glad he pointed that out, because I was thinking about saying the same thing. You got to think, they get it from either Putin or Xi Jinping. They say it's the best. What are they testing it on? And it's not the best, but they made theirs by reverse engineering something that took them 10 years to make it. So before you know it, you got a 50-year-old thing that's a knockoff. So now you're about 70 years behind. It is not the best. And guys, I don't know what's up. I'm getting really tired of this computer already, and it's brand new, but I'm skipping like a motherfucker in my camera.
Reports. For instance, Iran's Bavar 373 is just a cheap knockoff of the S-300 systems that Ukraine has been destroying in massive quantities in its war with Russia. Iran's Yazar is just a reverse-engineered version of China's HQ-7, and something similar.
What I've noticed is Russia has made their own stuff. I'll give Russia that. But China, it's like they cannot invent their own things. Like everything is reverse engineered because they're not trying to spend money on, investing on the technology, trying to learn about, like, getting to the point you got to do 1,000 trials, tweak things. They don't want to do all that. So they just want to reverse engineer someone else's stuff and then come out and think theirs is better than the original. That'll never happen.
Can be said of Iran's Zubin system. What we see here is that Iran tried to go up against two of the world's strongest air forces with an air defense network filled with garbage copies of other countries' tech. That went about as well as you would expect.
Fucking owned it.
Right now, Afterburner says the US has achieved air superiority in Iran due to these many air defense failures. Now America's goal has to switch to keep that superiority, because there are certain surface-to-air missile systems that are still alive and well, Afterburner claims. They'll pop out from a hiding spot and then launch a missile, so the US still has to take care in the skies. Iran's air defenses are crippled, but they're not quite dead. Still, they were useless enough to not be able to do a thing about America's 24-hour shock and awe campaign unleashed against the Iranian Air Force.
It's amazing, man.
And neither could Iran's airframes, which brings us back to the second reason why all of this happened to Iran. The simple fact is that Iran's air force was too weak to stack up to what the US brought to the table from the start. This was Mike Tyson.
And just think, Britain could have been standing right beside us with at least one aircraft carrier and maybe a destroyer, and at least been in on it, helping us getting their air defense ship could have saved someone's life. Who knows? But they wasn't there. They have a whole terrorist organization in their country. It's all IRGC members that are over there mourning the Ayatollah.
Delivering a haymaker to an old man with no arm. And you'll have seen that in the age of the airframes that we talked about right at the beginning. Aerotime goes into more detail, noting that Iran's beleaguered air force had zero chance right from the start. The very best of its fighter jets include a fleet of 65 F-4s, 41 F-14s, 35 F-5s, and an assortment of Soviet-era Russian platforms, such as the Su-24 and MiG-29. Add a few tankers and special mission aircraft into the mix, and that's all Iran had. The country also has no airborne early warning fleet, which, when combined with the utter failure of its air defenses, means that the Mike Tyson haymaker ended up being a sucker punch delivered right to the back of Iran's head. An ancient air force isn't a good start when you're going up against the US. But an old air force that isn't even being maintained is an even bigger problem. There are roughly 400 or so aging aircraft that have been crippled by sanctions, and they lack modern capabilities, Afterburner says. At least there were 400 aircraft in Iran's air force. There are a lot fewer now. But that sums it up, because even if Iran's pilots were foolish enough to try to take to the skies in their older fighter jets, they wouldn't even be able to trust those airframes to fulfill the limited capabilities that they're supposed to have. There were plenty of hints that this would be the case long before the US unleashed its firestorm against Iran's air force. Back in May 2022, Iran International reported that the volume of sanctions leveled against Iran was behind a spate of Air Force accidents that had resulted in several deaths. A pair of Iran's pilots had died at Iran's Dezfoul airbase in June 2021, both due to sudden glitches in their ejector seats that happened before they even got the aircraft off the ground. Retired pilot Brigadier General Kiyumaz Haidarian, who trained in the US and flew for the Iranian Air Force both before and after the 1979 revolution in the country, made it clear why this happened. Accidents happen everywhere, and no one in the world has managed to decrease the number of accidents to zero. But if the equipment is complete, it's natural that the number of accidents will be fewer, he said. In other words, ejector seats explode on their own when you don't have the parts to maintain them. By June 2025, the national interest was calling Iran's Air Force a mess, as it noted that Iran had gone to extreme lengths to keep a handful of its ancient aircraft airworthy, but even those weren't ever going to be effective against a modern air force. Again, sanctions were to blame, as Iran has to deal with the 1-2 punch of having an old fleet and the complete inability to maintain the majority of the aircraft that were in that fleet. So the fight was always going to play out in America's favour. The reasons why Iran's pilots aren't flying is that they don't have the equipment. They didn't have it even before the bombs and missiles flew, and they'll never have it again now that the few airframes that might have been viable for Iran have been destroyed. Even before the US struck, the national interest claimed that only 50 to 60% of Iran's 400 airframes were even flyable, with the rest being set aside for the spare parts that the sanctions prevent Iran from buying elsewhere. This was an unfair fight right from the start. But that's what happens when you have a fleet composed of predominantly old Western airframes and a regime that hates the West. Rod, meet Iran's back, built by the very regime that is now crumbling. Talk about biting the hand that feeds. With its air force practically gone, Iran only has a handful of aerial options left, and almost all of them are unmanned, which means that Iran has not only lost millions of dollars of airframes to the US strikes, but it also has to deal with the sunk cost of training a bunch of pilots who aren't ever going to fly. Still, Iran's drones are doing more than its airframes ever did. Al Jazeera reports that hundreds of Iran's drones have targeted bases and military nodes in several Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates.
See, what do you guys think? If you would, in the comments, let me know. Do you think they started attacking all the countries around them because they thought those countries were going to pressure us to stop? Or is this just, I mean, to me, it's just showing exactly why it needed to be done. It should have been done in 1989. After 10 years of them saying, death to America, we should have cleared them motherfuckers out right then. Took them back to the Stone Ages. Because, I don't know. All I do know is they've pissed off every single country around them to where they all are wanting to attack them. And I wish they would, but it's got to make sure their shit's precise. You don't want to kill the people. And man, them Iranian women are beautiful. And that just tells me there's no way the IRGC are not straight up gay. I mean, why would you make your women cover head to toe except for their eyes? And most are just beautiful as can be.
Emirates. The Russian news agency TASS carries comments by a supposed unmanned aircraft expert named Dmitry Kuzyakin, who claims that economy, as always, is the main weapon of any war, and here it's on Iran's side. Iran can change war with drones literally indefinitely. That feels like a stretch. Granted, the US spends a lot more than the cost of building a drone on air defense missiles like those used in its Patriot systems.
Why we don't have
if we're
free
talking
health
economy, combining existing sanctions with the US and Israel wrecking the Iranian means of drone production with their expensive missiles suggests that Iran's drone-reliant strategy may have a shorter shelf life than the Russian analyst suggests. Oh, and it's not like the US doesn't have drones of its own. If Iran's regime somehow manages to survive the blitz that it's absorbing right now, the US can easily rush one way and intercept the drones into manufacturing to engage in a tit-for-tat battle if needed. The reality that Iran has to face is that time is running out on its defense. All it has left are drones and depleting supplies of missiles, as its air force, along with every other facet of the asymmetrical strategy intended to launch against the US, lies in ruins. Iran is still trying to maintain some sort of threat, of course. As fighter jets burn on the tarmac, Iran was vowing to strike European countries if they dared join the war on America's side. But the US, and likely Europe, know that these threats are starting to ring increasingly hollow. Iran is in no position.
That's exactly why Britain originally said we can't use their air bases, which that's fucked up for an ally that saved y'all's asses. Not once, but twice from getting taken over from fucking Germany. That's real fucked up. But it's okay. It ain't like you could have stopped us from using your bases. If we wanted to stop and refuel there, we will, and you ain't gonna do shit about it. You can't even get one destroyer to protect your people in your territory, which they're talking about taking the airbase away from you for that shit. And there's a third aircraft carrier on its way now. It's the George H.W. or no, not George H.W. Bush. Yeah, that's the dad. Okay, I was just thinking I was saying the son. I was about to say no. But it's on its way now. It'll be there in like 2 days. So they're going to have 3 strike groups over there instead of 2. That just tells me they're not letting up. They're trying to get them to just do a complete and utter surrender. It ain't like we're just going to walk away if they did it. We're still going to make sure they ain't, fucking shooting people in the street and shit. Fuck all that. But, yeah, we are just showing our might, and it scares the fuck out of Russia and China. It does. I don't care what they say. It does.
To start throwing them around. And if Trump is to be believed, whatever off-ramps that the US might have been offering a few days ago have been withdrawn.
They're gone.
They want to talk, Trump claimed of Iran. I said, too late. But having said that, Trump is scheduled to speak with the remnants of Iran's regime on March 8th. Reportedly at the request of the regime itself. A white flag will likely be present. Whether the US chooses to accept Iran's surrender, and whether Iran's regime is collectively pig-headed enough to believe that it will still be able to bargain for anything, will only be seen over the weekend. In the meantime, Iran will continue to make threats. But with what force? Certainly not an air force, that's for sure. With half its fleet gone and the rest unlikely to be flyable, Iran has surrendered its skies to the US and Israel. And all it took was 24 hours. Iran can't even console itself with the thought that the US unleashed the one missile that changed air combat forever against its jets. How could it? Iran's fighters never got off the ground.
Now, I know Trump today in his little meeting or his little press conference, he said they got some targets that they were trying to not hit, but are thinking about hitting it, and and it's going to send them back to the Stone Age. But if we go hit the damn power plants, it's going to knock off all the power throughout Iran. And they're basically back to the Stone Ages. The internet's out already. Damn, you ain't got no lights. Your phone can't be charged. There's no way to contact anyone on the outside if that was to happen. So, I don't know, guys. Let me know what you thought about the video. Let me know your thoughts. I hope you're all having a beautiful day, wonderful night. Please be safe, and I will definitely be on y'all screen next time if you come and watch. But other than that, I will catch y'all later.